I've landed at least 15 clients with a minimum of 1 million subscribers and getting paid over $1,000 per video using this step-by-step DM closing framework. I've been fired by clients and I've also been praised by clients. So I know what it's like to be on both ends of the spectrum. I know what clients want and don't want. And I know what pisses them off and what they like to hear. And I know how to go about these kinds of things. I guess I just know how to talk to clients. And if you want, further proof, you can go, down to my portfolio. Like if you go in the description of the video somewhere, there's going to be my portfolio link so you can see, who I've worked with. And bear in mind, these aren't like all of my clients. This is just a set of them because, this real thing would go on for a long time if I put in all of my clients. You can see some of my work, testimonials and stuff, statistics. And if you want, you can just, I guess, stalk my Twitter and all my socials until, you find everything you really need to know about me. But, until then, let's just first focus on this because I want to go over this step-by-step closing framework because I think DMing clients is much simpler than people make it out to be. And being a salesman isn't really all that crazy when it comes to working with creators, okay? And be sure to stick around because I do uncover a few detrimental things for you to know at the end of the video. And these won't make sense. Like, if you can go and skip, you can try, but these won't make sense if you don't look through all of these first. And don't worry, it's not too long. I'll make sure to keep it nice and short. So the first thing we need to know is that this is very simple. I know it's big block, but it's very, very, very simple, okay? 'Cause talking to clients is just like talking to people. And especially when you're talking with creators. And the best part about working with creators is that, again, they're just normal people. And they pay a lot more money than entrepreneurs would because they have higher demands from you. And if they have a higher demand, they're willing to pay more. And the best part about it is that it's so simple. You don't need to use certain sales tactics. And, when you do, it won't really work on creators as much because they're a lot more scarce with the idea of hiring somebody who presents themselves as like, some kind of offer seller or some sort of salesman or some kind of sleazy salesman, right? So they don't have quite the same mindset as your regular, finance gurus do. They're just much easier to talk to. You can just say, hello, I want to work, and they say, yes, cool, and they pay you a shit ton of money. But I'm going to go through what to and not to do when going to talk to them. So I'm going to go through, again, these 4 things. So this is an iceberg, right? You can't really tell, but this is a picture of an iceberg. And this is kind of explaining the different stages of talking to a client. And we're starting off with the opener, and then the response, and then we've got the water here, and then beneath the water is like the deep stuff we really need to get into. And again, it's literally just 4 steps you have to go through when it comes to talking to clients. And this is like actual DM structure with actual pictures from my DMs. Yeah. So let's get into the first one, which is the opener. So this is simply the beginning of the conversation. So whether you started up with your outreach message or they started off with outreaching to you, this is just a very simple and sweet opener that engages the other person. So this goes with both outreach and inbound clients. It starts off nice and sweet. And if they send you a wall of text, whatever, fine, okay? At the end of the day, a client's just DM'd you. That's all we care about. But if you're outreaching to them, keep it very nice, short and sweet. You don't want to send them, a huge paragraph. You don't want to overboard them with knowledge and information. Not knowledge, but just more so just information and details they don't really need to know. And most importantly, don't put your entire offer on the table. If I said to you, hey, I'm a video editor and I noticed that your content needs some upgrading, I can do that for you. If you just pay me $5,000 a month, I can increase your retention and I can get you more views and I can get you more leads and da-da-da-da. All I really need to do is just kind of look at the price and say no. And the best part is I can look at the price, say no, without even messaging you. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. They put their entire offer on the table. The whole point of this short and sweet and simple message is that you're just giving them what they need to know, your portfolio, right? They just need to know what your work looks like so they can do the work themselves of imagining, hey, can I imagine that guy's editing being applied to my content? And if they want to know more about you, they're going to have to get it out of you. They're going to have to engage. And then they'll say something like, hi, I like your editing. What can you do for me? Okay? And it's that simple, okay? It's that simple. Just, it's kind of like a hook, right? You just want to get them hooked onto the idea of just, I guess, engaging with you. It's, it's nothing crazy. It's tiny baby steps for them. We don't want to get them to, fucking like get married or, get a contract or, work full time. That's too much commitment, far too much commitment. And this goes for everything. So like the same way with, if you were to ask a girl out on a date, you'd say, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? You don't say, hey, so when should we get married? What venue? Huh? What kind of flowers do you want? Okay. How should people dress? It's like, whoa, calm down. And it's the same with clients. It's the same with everybody. It's too much commitment, which is why you don't want to open up with, hey, click on my Calendly link. Hey, come talk to me on a call. Hey, let's do this. Let's do that. Let's just take a breather and say, hi, here's my portfolio. I heard you were looking for an editor. Let me know if you're interested. Done. Simple. The second part is the response. So this is when the receiving party responds to the opening message. And like I said, this is whether, you're responding to them or they are responding to your outreach. And this is like, either way, this is a perfect opportunity for you to get a good idea of how the client speaks, so you can match their tone and language. And, here are 2 inbound clients. And these are 2 examples where one of them was very formal to me and another person was very kind of easy to talk to. And these were both in cases where they had like tens upon tens of millions of subscribers. And I think I've done my best here, if I'm correct. Yeah. I've done my best here to cover up who they are, just out of respect for them. But yeah, these were both like huge creators, and they both spoke very differently to me. So one of them was just saying, hey, I'm looking for an editor, da 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 da. And then he gives me like, oh, you need to use Adobe Premiere, Vinci, da 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 da. Let me know if you're interested and we can do a paid test edit. So he's kind of done what I told you not to do, but I don't care. Granted, I'll explain why this is kind of a bad thing later on, but I just care about landing a client right now, especially like if I'm, short, if I'm very scarce with clients, if I don't have a lot of them, I don't care. But he's kind of just put everything on the table. So that gives me a good idea of how to talk to him. So I just said, hi, thanks for reaching out. I'm currently free for a trial. Okay, so yes, I can do a trial. And this guy was just like, hey mate, hope you're good. Yeah, I just want to look for an editor. Let me know, thanks. So I responded with, hi mate, keeping it casual. Yeah, open for work. Would love to work with you and your team. Just let me know the conditions. So this one is a lot more lighter. This one's a lot more casual, and this one's a lot more just straight up, hey, I need an editor. Are you interested? Both slightly different with how I speak, and they feel like they're understood, really. Like I made the mistake. Like it was a very obvious, and like everyone does it, but when I started out, I was very formal. Actually, like one of my recent videos, I was talking about like how I landed my first client for $15. And I was like super like, formal about it. I had like my suit and tie on and shit. And, it's just, it wasn't really, still landed him. But it was just, I realized afterwards, it was just like, oh, clients are a lot more casual. Oh, wow, they're just normal people who make YouTube videos. It's as simple as that. But, some of them are a bit more formal. And, if you respond casually and if you don't really match their tone, they feel like you don't quite get the importance of the job. But for these guys, it's just like, they're trying to let you know that, hey, it's chill. Just do the job and it's all good. So yeah, it's just basically a good way of, telling them that you understand. I get it. Like I get the vibe. I get what's expected of me. Stuff like that. So yeah. With number 3, we've got conditions. So now this is when you're both engaged in conversation. You're talking. You continue speaking in how they speak, so they understand that you understand them. And that you'd be a perfect fit for the team. But this is more than just, matching tone. It's just about trying to find as much as possible. Like, try to squeeze information out of them. So the more invested they are in the conversation, the more flexible they are to working with you, okay? So the more you get them to talk to you, the more invested they'll be. They'll start having this kind of bias towards you because, they've invested so much time in talking with you. They might as well just try you out. I'll just try them out, and then anything that you do from that point onwards, is just up to you, okay? But we just want to get them to feel like, oh, okay, like I've spent this much time talking with him. I might as well just give him a try. I might as well just, give him a trial or something. And so to use these images from, the response part. So the one on the left was a lot more like he wasn't giving it. Like he just was not allowing it. He understood what I was trying to do, but he shut it down immediately. So he was very not rude, like he just knew what he wanted, and he just said, okay, this is what we want, this is it, can you do it? And I was trying to kind of get, see how much wiggle room I could get, but he wasn't particularly giving it. He was just like, yeah, this is the price, and he texted in a lot of blocks, so he wasn't really interested in engaging in a full-on conversation, meaning I could tell there wasn't a lot of wiggle room with this guy. There wasn't a lot of wiggle room with creativity, or kind of style or pricing. It's like, and when I mean there isn't a lot of wiggle room, that doesn't mean that it's impossible to change the price. They came into this conversation with a set expectation and a set idea of, what kind of editor is going to fit in and how they're going to fit into the system. Whereas the guy on the right, he was very, he was engaging a lot. He was talking a lot. He was very open to talk about his work, this and that. And we got into Discord and on a call, and he was very open to talking about it a lot more in depth. And he was a lot more, open to talking about pricing and stuff like that. And he was cool with whatever. So this is also a good test to see, what kind of client are you going to work with? Is it going to be somebody who expects something out of you and then you do it? Or is this going to be a lot more of a partnership, a closer partnership relationship with this person? So yeah, when they just give off the conditions like that, it's a lot harder to, not a lot harder, but it's, when they give off the conditions like that, they have a fixed understanding and a fixed expectation. But when they're willing to talk about the conditions more, it's more so just, here's what I want to see how you deal with it, and, creativity is kind of up to you, okay? So these kind of clients are a lot more flexible than these clients, but, that doesn't make them bad clients. That just means that, they just expect something out of you, like a very specific kind of product, kind of editing out of you. Now, the reason why we're going to talk about our conditions so much in the conditions of the video is because we want to basically just flex our knowledge, tell them what we know. So we had, I don't know who this client was. Oh yeah, I know. So these were two, I think, different clients or the same ones. I think it's the same one, but all I did was just non-stop questions. Oh, you mean this or this or this or this? Or so how long do I this and this and this? And, you'd think that I was being annoying and then I was being a bit of a rat, but generally it's just telling them, okay, I just want to know more about your work. Like, tell me what kind of operation are you guys running? This and that and this and that. And it also builds up this kind of, this idea that you're cooking up a specific price, a price that's been modeled specifically for their conditions. So when you start moving on to the pricing section, which is what we're going to talk about afterwards, is, it's kind of like building up to this idea where, oh, he's asking all these questions because he has a set price for us, rather than, whatever. Now, you could have a specific price for them, or you could just go with your regular price. But either way, just the idea of asking for their conditions and, understanding what their process is like it shows a bunch of different things. One of them being, oh, he's trying to come up with a price for this. He wants to understand, how much work do you have to do and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, that's the kind of perception you're building up. Finally, we're going to be moving on to the pricing. So first of all, when it comes to just deciding a price, so this goes for if you're like brand new to editing and you don't know what to set your price at, or, if you're thinking about upping your price, well, just look at your skill. It's the number one thing that drives belief for its price tag. Like I've worked with this guy. I'm doing one-on-one coaching with this guy, and he has brilliant work. And I was like, dude, why do you charge so little? And he's just like, I don't believe it. So I kind of put things into perspective for him. I showed him, his work and how good he was. And I put it into, like, I basically put glasses on his head saying, dude, this is what your work is worth. Like, if I was editing this is what I think it's worth. And, this is why your work is good. And this is the room for improvement. But generally, I think you're this. And he didn't really see it that way. He thought prices were this kind of very icky, specific kind of thing. But it's just like, dude, if you're good, you're good. If you're bad, you're bad. If you're da-da-da, you're da-da-da. And, he went from like charging $300 to $1,000 within a week, because I just put it into perspective for him. Hey, this is your, this is how good your editing is. I don't think you realize that. And also, editing is the number one, it's the most important thing. I can't believe I have to say this in this day and age. It's the most important fucking thing in your entire business. And, he went on to go land a client for $1,000. And he was like, huh, I guess it is. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed editing matters when it comes to editing? Like, and when it comes to being a good salesman and having sales skills and sales and, all of this marketing stuff. And I understand that. And sure, you can be a brilliant salesman. You could have crappy editing, and if you were brilliant at selling yourself, then you could probably land a big client for a lot of money with your bad editing. I understand that. But do you know how much energy you save and how much stress and time and how little the expectations are when you're just good at editing? Like, you don't have to worry about all of this, like all of these like different knickknacks and gimmicks you have to focus on, and all of these different sales tactics, when you can just be good at editing. And it's the number one thing that drives your price, and that's it. And you need to believe in it. Like if you don't believe in your price, how can you convince somebody else to believe in your price? Okay? Somebody acting on the idea of paying for something, or somebody just getting somebody to act on something. So whether it's payments or doing this or doing that, it's just a matter of beliefs. They climb these chain of beliefs, so to speak. Like, imagine if it was a rope, right? So you climb the rope, and every single time, you get closer and closer to believing, that means you get closer and closer to acting on it. If you do not believe that your editing is worth a certain price, like let's say $500, right? So let's say let's say you want to charge $500, but you don't believe it's worth $500, you cannot convince somebody to climb that rope. And therefore, they will never get to that little center bit. They'll never get to that center bit where they say, okay, I'm gonna start hiring this guy for $500 per video. You can never, ever, ever get to that if you yourself don't believe that your editing is good enough to be worth $500 per video. Never. It will never get to that point, because that is literally just like it's just how the universe works. If you don't believe, they can't believe. Okay? That's like the number one thing of sales, is like, if you don't believe in the product, they will not. Okay? So this is why skill in editing is so important, because a lot of people, they can't sell themselves properly if they don't believe it's good enough. You need to like, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to continue banging on about this, because I think you get the point. And here's the thing, if they object, you want to find out why. Okay, so this doesn't mean like, oh, why won't you hire me? Please hire me, please. I'm so good at editing. You just want to stand your ground. You just want to fucking get a grip of yourself and say, okay, no worries. Why is that? Maybe we can sort this out. Okay. I'd like to know why. Now, if you're like a couple $100 above budget, it means there's wiggle room. Like, a lot of clients will lowball. A lot of clients will, give off these prices that are just nowhere near, or maybe they just believe in that moment where they don't have to pay that much. But if let's say you're charging $500 and they say, oh, we're only looking for somebody who's doing $400. Oh, baby, you can push that. Believe me, you can get them to that point. Okay? Like, that's an objection you can handle. But if it's to the point where, you're outlandishly out of budget. So let's say you charge $500 and they're like, oh, I've only got $50. Okay, well then that's a different scenario, because that means either you've misread the level of their needs, or they just simply cannot afford you. And most times it won't be the second thing, because clients can sort of tell, or at least like, especially when people can see that you've worked with bigger clients, or, if your work is spectacular, then they won't bother approaching you. Like I've had people tell me, so people that I've outreached to tell me like, you're a bit out of my budget, are you not? And I'm like, well, depends what your budget is. And they'll tell me, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I am out of your budget. So they understand, okay? So most times it'll probably be because you've misread the level of their needs, which doesn't mean that, you're some scumbag that's charging too much. It just means that, well, what if they just want a simple video? So if you say $500, they're like, no, that's a bit too much. And, that's completely fine. That's completely normal. And you don't have to work with that person. I think a huge mistake that people make is that, they must work with the client. And, but my life would be so much better if I worked with the client, even if it's a bit of money, because I don't have any money right now. If you're like dead broke and you need it, I understand. But if you've already got a bit of money, and you want to raise your prices, you're going to waste your time by working with somebody who's paying you a lot less than what you're worth. You would be profiting a lot more for your business long term if you just sat in After Effects and practice a bit. Your editing would get better, therefore your value would go up, and therefore when the time comes where somebody who's looking for an editor is willing to pay $700 or $1,000, you can go from $500 to $1,000 because you sat in After Effects every single day just playing, instead of working with clients who pay you much, much less than what you're worth. Okay? That client who pays you much, much less, sure, you get a couple bucks in the short term, but in the long term, you're screwing yourself over because you're not flexing and you're not practicing working on those creative muscles of yours. Okay? So, sometimes clients just aren't, they aren't meant for you. And I kind of want to uncover these kind of myths and misconceptions that people have about landing clients, because it is, believe me, it's so much simpler than you think. Like, sure, there's a few details you need to keep in mind, but there's things like, for example, sales skills are unnecessary. Oh, that's supposed to say unnecessary. And that is simply just because, like, again, you don't need to be a crazy salesman, especially with clients who are creators, because like I've spoken to creators who have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they'll DM me and say, hey Danny, I've seen your content and I'm assuming you know a lot about editors and creators, content creators. How do I go about hiring an editor? Some of these guys don't even know what they're doing. Okay, and it's completely fine. They just need to have somebody reliable. It is as simply as that. Like, they just need to rely on you so that they can spend less time and less energy on their process, on their production process, so they can focus more on ideation, and they can start delegating these things like editing, and that's your responsibility. That is all they need. Like, that is your offer. Just, I'll make your life easier by editing good videos. That it's as simple as that. That's the only sales skills you really need. So the next thing is, don't publicly humiliate clients. The number one mistake I've seen with editors is when they'd say, look at this client, he's saying he's gonna pay me $10 per video. What an idiot. And like, don't ever do that, because A, that makes you look like a prick, and B, like, so what if they're undercharging? Some people just simply cannot afford to pay that much, or they don't need crazy heavily edited videos, therefore they are not paying as much. So before you go on Twitter and start like trying to like get a bunch of engagement on your tweet for humiliating a client, don't ever. I've had people who couldn't afford my price, and then they'll come back to me like years later, and you may have not experienced that because you've been editing for a couple of months, but clients come back years later. Okay, I've been editing for quite some time, so they come back to me years later and say, hey Danny, let's work together. I'm like, okay, but I'm letting you know my prices have gone up. And they're like, that's fine, what do you got for me? And I'm like, well, okay, 1,000, 1,005, 1,007, 2. And they'd be like, no problem, let's do it. And I'd sort of sit there surprised, like, oh, okay, so the guy who's paying me $50 not too long ago is now paying me over 1,000. Funny. Could you imagine if, and bear in mind, these are clients that I got fired by. There are clients who fired me who come back to me, which leads me to my next point, which is maintain goodwill. If you get fired by a client, or if you disagree with them, they say, no problems, I understand. Good luck finding an editor. Let me know if you need anything in the future, or perhaps we could work some other time in the future. Perhaps not now. Okay, and they do come back because they're like, wow, how nice. You're nicer than that other prick who tweeted about me. Okay, so when I first got fired by my first long-term client who had like 80,000 subscribers at the time, he came back to me years later. So when he fired me at around three or 400,000 subscribers, and then we come back to when he has about 1 million, just under 1 million. He's like, hey, let's work together again. And I'm like, oh, okay. And could you imagine if I roasted him? This is the guy that fired me, and I got angry, I got upset, but I didn't do anything. I was like, I need to keep my cool because I don't want to say something stupid. Could you imagine if I was like, hey, fuck you, my editing is good, okay? I would have never have gotten that guy to come back. So maintain goodwill no matter what. Like, I've had clients call me names. I've had clients upset because I said, like, I've had a guy who I turned down because I said I want to focus on school. I went from his number one editor to his number one mortal enemy. Guys started calling me names. Okay? And even if they call you names, like, whatever. Like, hell, you get scammed, whatever. Brush it off. That is not a good look for you if you start tweeting about it. Okay? Maintain goodwill. Say, I'm sorry I'm sorry you feel like that. Perhaps we can do this, or perhaps we can talk in the future. Right? Just stand your grounds. Just continue being a good person. Okay? Because here's another thing. Just, if you don't want to be a good person, fine. But think about it this way. If you start judging people for specific actions, in your mind, that is because you yourself cannot let yourself do that exact same thing. So, for example, imagine one day you start hiring an editor yourself, and then you start charging $100. You feel like shit. You feel like shit because you used to humiliate people who say, hey, I can only pay $100. And now you feel like shit because, you started humiliating them. But, the editor that you're messaging, the guy on the other side is thinking, wow, $100. I can't wait to work with this guy. And you feel like shit because you used to humiliate clients who would offer $100 per video. I can't stress, there's so many shitty people out there. Just maintain goodwill with everybody. Like, make no enemies, right? Maintain goodwill, full stop. Now, this next one is free edits aren't valuable. If you come to a client and you say, hey, I'll edit you a free video, or you say, hey, I've edited you a free video, it's useless. Like, it's useless. Now, the reason is because, like, especially if you're trying to target bigger clients, the problem isn't money. And this doesn't mean, like, you never do anything for free. Hell, like, if there's a free trial, I'll do it. I'm cool with doing free trials. But I don't really see the point in, going to clients and editing something for free for them because, free was never the problem. It was a matter of skill. It's just a matter of skill. So this is completely unneeded, and it's a waste of time. The next one is best editor wins. Like, I used to think that I was probably over my head when it came to, because I saw, since 2022, people have been talking about, editing is tipped towards more an entrepreneurship side more than it has an editor side. So I became like one of the few people who was thinking, am I wrong? Is editing really about sales? Is it really about sales or not editing? And it kind of swayed my mind until I started landing much bigger clients. And I landed them because I was good. And I was starting to beat other editors who were also good at editing, simply just because I knew the task and I knew it was best, and they loved my work, and they said so. They said so. They said, oh yes, because you're good. It's the number one feedback I get. So best editor wins. Like, your skill matters most. And, if you're facing a trial, dude, you can be the best salesman in the world. But, like, if another editor is better than you, he's going to get the job. I hate to break it to you, he's going to get the job. Okay? So good luck with your sales skills, but if you're just shit at editing, you're shit at editing. Okay? Pardon my French. Next one is don't make promises. And I can't stress how important, I can't press on this enough. If you say, hey, I'll maximize retention, I will get you more views, I will get you more leads, I will get you this, I'll get you that. How? How? I've seen plenty of editors say, none of this matters. None of this matters if you can't get clients leads and if you can't maximize their retention. It's like, how will you do that with your editing? Like, do you have proof? I've never seen a single person. Somebody please come DM me. My Twitter DMs are open. Please come to me and show me your step-by-step as to how you get people results. Because I see all the talk in the world, and I'm not seeing a shred of proof by any editor who says they get leads for their clients, and their editing is the variable that lands clients for their clients. So if you're working for an entrepreneur who's trying to sell a program or sell a course, how are you guys getting these guys leads? And how do you know that your editing is the variable for this? How do you know that your editing is the thing that has had an impact on their business model? How do you know it's you? And what in your editing is doing that? Okay? Like, what is it? I'm curious. I'm just curious because I'm seeing a lot of people who make promises and they fail to fulfill those promises. And I've talked about this before, but if you make a promise to somebody and you fail to fulfill, you failed the client. If you work with a client and you never fulfill a promise and then you don't get that result, okay? So let's say, for example, I say I'm going to get you a million views on the first video. If I make that promise to you and you hire me and I don't get it, then I failed you. If I make that promise and I do get it, well, then you're neutral because all I did was my job. But let's say I never made that promise in the first place. And then I go and get 1 million views. Well, then you're over the moon. You're like, this editor just got 1 million views in his first video. He's incredible. But now let's say I don't make that promise and I don't get the 1 million views. It's just another day. Getting 1 million views is extraordinary. But if you make it out as if, it's just what you do. I'm just so good at editing. It's just what I do. I just get 1 million views on every single video. Well, then you're now going to shift this client's paradigm into thinking, well, this guy is so good. He can get 1 million views on every video. I hire him. He doesn't get 1 million views. He lied. He failed. He's fired. I hire him. He gets 1 million views. He keeps his job. So now the stakes are all the way up here. You've raised the stakes for no reason. Like if you can get 1 million views per video, put that on your portfolio. Put that on your statistics. Tweet about it. Don't make a promise. Just say, hey, look at this cool thing that I got. Okay? Promises do nothing but raise the stakes. And they just make your job harder. Finally, trials benefit both parties. Trials are not only for creators to see if you're good enough. Trials are also for editors to see if they want to work with that client. Ingrain this into your mind. Like inject this into your veins. Like keep it, like write it down somewhere. Trials are not just for the client, they're also for you. I worked with a creator, huge creator, and I had no idea. I didn't know what to expect when coming into this trial. Thank God I took a trial because I didn't like the work at all. And this was a big creator. He had millions and millions of subscribers. And I took a trial with him and I didn't like working with him. And, he said that I did the trial brilliant, but I said, thank you. This was a great, this is a great opportunity for me. I'm glad to have, done this trial with you. However, this isn't particularly the kind of content I want to work on. And that's no offense to you. It's just a personal preference. And he was like, no problem. I understand. A few editors don't. But thank you for letting me know in advance. Okay? And that showed me that there's a lot of clients who, they don't think about the trials much. They just do it. Or at least they skip the trial. And they're like, oh, I hate this. I had coached an editor recently and, he just took on a job without doing the trial. And I told him this. And it opened his mind because when he took on this job, he hated it. He He said he had never hated editing something so much in his life. And I said, you skip the trial. You know, the trials aren't just to see if you're good enough for the clients. Trials are there to see if you enjoy editing that content, if that's something you want to work on. They go both ways. Is this editor good for me? Is this the content I want to edit? Okay? Paid, not paid, it doesn't matter. This is a test to see if you guys are compatible for a relationship. That's as simple as. Okay? And, you know, the more you start thinking negatively of trials, the less effort you're going to put in. I hate trials. Oh, this guy's making me do a trial. Oh, this guy wants me to do a free trial. Well, here's the thing. I don't care for free trials. I'll do a free trial. And if my competition starts complaining about free trials, I'm going to lap him. I'm going to lap him round and round. I'm going to beat him into getting this client, because I just, you know, he's gonna start saying things like, I hate doing trials, I hate doing free trials, I don't even know, you know, he starts filling his head with all this garbage, you know, this and that's about the client, this and that's about the content. He's filling his head with all this garbage, and it's distorting his view. Dude, I don't care if I'm getting paid or not. Money is not a, you know, this is gonna sound like, oh, this is gonna make me sound like the biggest prick ever, but like, you know, money is not a problem for me. Not because I'm not Jeff Bezos, but, you know, I don't look to make incredible amounts of money from editing anymore. I want to edit stuff that I enjoy. Because editing is a passion for me. Whoa, you know, big whoop. But I'm cool with doing free trials, and I'm willing to put my all into it if it means getting the job. And if an editor loses to me, that's just going to bum them out even more. And it's like, oh, but I just did all that for nothing. And then, you know, they don't put their all into it. And if I lose to somebody else, if I don't get the job because another editor beat me to it, I don't have that unhealthy mindset of, oh, I just spent all that time. It's just like, well, you know, congratulations to him. Every single time I don't get the job from a trial, I will always tell the client, send my congratulations to that editor. I'm sure he did a brilliant job, because I know that I put my all into it, and if he did better, he understood something that I did not. Okay? And I, like, again, this is also maintaining goodwill, but I just, you know, I have no beef with trials. I have no beef with free trials. You know, I'm cool either way. Okay? And all of this, I guarantee you, all of this will just make you out to be a better editor. It's not just about getting the clients, but it's also just about being a better editor. So yeah. And like, again, this is going to be very ironic, but if you want to learn more about this stuff, you know, I give all of this stuff away for free in my free community for editors just like you, whether you're a beginner or a professional. There's stuff in there that you don't want to miss out on. So first link in the description, and have a good day.